News: a petition drive is now underway to repeal a new law concerning school choice and our tax money going to private schools.
The governor praises the law, saying it will allow for underprivileged students to attend a private school they otherwise could not afford to. Brian Mastery live tonight with what happens next. Brian.
Jacqueline, the group Support Our Schools Nebraska began collecting signatures today. The goal, 90,000 of them in 90 days to put the ballot for voters to decide in November of 2024. Reverend Michael Williams, Omaha's Mount Moriah Church, signed the petition first as opponents of LB 753 gathered on the steps of the Capitol. Many argued that the new law, called the Opportunity Scholarships Act, lacks transparency and accountability for private schools, two tenets of public education. There's also a fear that while public schools must accept all students, private schools can pick and choose their students.
In Arizona, Louisiana, and Virginia, states with similar programs, analysis has found that more than 60% of those tax credits end up flowing to families with incomes more than $200,000 a year.
The program allows tax credits up to $25 million the first year, possibly growing to $100 million in total. Opponents of the school choice bill argue this will take away public dollars for public schools and that it shouldn't be diverted to private schools. The architect of LB 753, Senator Luann Linehan of Elkhorn, has said she's deeply disappointed, along with 32 other senators who supported the bill, that Nebraska's public education establishment have pursued the ballot initiative, which, if successful, would, in her view, deny opportunities for vulnerable and at-risk children. Live in the newsroom, Brian Mastery, 6 News.
All right.